Today on The Best Defense, a stunning turn of events in Adam Gallard's trial. A mistrial, a plea deal, and a weeping Gallard on the witness stand. We've got all the details, and we'll talk to his defense attorneys live. Plus, mystery solved in the death of Anna Nicole Smith's son. We've got the latest. The Best Defense starts right now. This is The Best Defense. I'm Ron Kuby. Jamie Floyd is away on White House business today. Hopefully she's making things better. We'll have the very latest on the death of Anna Nicole Smith's son later in the show. But first up, we're live in Florida, where Adam Gallard took a not-so-traditional path from defendant to convict. The 35-year-old accused of leaving the scene of a fatal crash has always maintained since its arrest that he didn't know that he hit anyone when he lost control of his car. Well, yesterday, after jurors deliberated for 5 hours and 25 minutes, and after announcing twice that they couldn't reach a verdict, Judge Sandra McSorley, she declared a mistrial.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I originally advised you when you first indicated that you could not reach a unanimous verdict, that once you came back, I would be in a position to grant a mistrial, which is what has occurred in this case.
But it didn't end there. In a surprising twist, Andrew Gallard then pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of a crash involving death, and the judge then imposed her sentence.
Acknowledgement, then I will accept your plea of guilty, Mr. Gallard. I find it to be freely and voluntarily given. You appear to me to clearly understand the nature and consequences of your plea, and there is, without question, an adequate factual basis to support this plea. In accordance with the agreement, in the aforementioned case, I hereby adjudicate you guilty as charged, count 1 of the amended information, that being leaving the scene of a crash resulting in death, and sentence you to 5 years in the Department of Corrections with credit for 498 days, followed by a consecutive term of 10 years probation with the special conditions identified by the terms of the plea.
Okay. Gallard then did what he didn't do during his trial. He took the witness stand, although not subject to cross-examination, and tearfully apologized to the families of the victims.
What can somebody say after an accident like that? I take full responsibility for the loss of those 2 women. I do not doubt that. I do not argue that. I'm so sorry.
So, a lot of twists and turns in that Florida courtroom yesterday. And joining us now with all the details, live from the courthouse, correspondent Beth Karras. Beth, I guess the question on my mind when I heard about this is why? It seemed like he not only had the best defense, it seemed like he had the bestest defense. Very convincing accident reconstruction expert, hung jury, mistrial, virtual certainty. The judge said she was going to declare a mistrial if the jury came back a second time, and indeed they did. Why a plea?
Well, you know, he was facing 15 years if convicted. No one knew it at the time of the plea, but the split, we later learned, was 5-1 for guilt. I mean, that's pretty tough. Had he gone to trial again, I mean, often after a mistrial, a retrial, the second trial doesn't end so well for a defendant. That's been our experience in cases we've covered anyway. He didn't know what the judge would give him if he's convicted. 5 years is pretty reasonable. He's been in for over a year, about a year and a half now. He does 85% of that time. He's going to do a couple of years in state prison, 10 years probation. That's going to be the real test for him. Because he's going to be subjected to random drug screening. So actually both sides were satisfied, and this plea would not have been entered without the approval, apparently, of the victims' families. Ellen Roberts consulted with the families, and they did agree with it. They wanted some closure.
And what was the prosecution's reaction, Beth?
Well, the prosecutor, Ellen Roberts, did react to Adam Gallard's statement outside the courthouse. She spoke to us, and here's what she had to say regarding his guilty plea and the case being over.
I felt guilty was genuine. He didn't want to kill anybody. We know that. But, you know, I mean, he didn't set out that morning and say, I'm going to go kill 2 people. And he's got to be remorseful over that.
Ellen Roberts also told me that had he identified himself to the police at 7 in the morning or 9:22 in the morning, whenever he says he learned that he had injured these women on the bridge, then probably no charges would have been filed in the case. Of course, that's assuming he wasn't impaired, he wasn't drunk, which he says he was not.
Right, Beth.
Ron?
That, of course, is always the question. Was he impaired under the influence of alcohol? We'll never know, because by the time he turned himself in, the alcohol would have metabolized. This does seem like, under the circumstances, given what he was facing, a pretty good deal for the defense. What was the defense reaction?
Well, David Roth, the lead defense attorney, did also speak with us outside the courthouse, and he reacted to the mistrial and the guilty plea. Here's what he said.
Everyone's sad, our client's sad, we're sad. There is no victory in a case like this. One can only hope that the parties involved in the case, the families and our client and his family, can heal.
Relatives of Linda Taylor, one of the 2 victims, later told us that they indeed accepted Gallard's apology to them from the witness stand after his guilty plea. They said they need closure, and this plea deal was a perfect opportunity for closure.
All right, Beth, I want to give 2 fantastic guests an opportunity to react fairly quickly to this really surprising development. Here in our New York studio, J. Buzz von Ornsteiner, forensic psychologist and repeated guest here on In Session. Buzz, what's your view?
Well, you know, he does have a history of being a problematic driver, and he does have a history of substance abuse. In addition to that, he was driving all night searching for his girlfriend, and he was upset about some drug dealer who was harassing him. So on top of everything else, he was sleep deprived. So in those situations, again, we don't know how deprived he was when it comes to a lack of sleep, but you clearly should not be driving. In that situation, he was a threat to others, because when we don't have enough sleep, we can be skewed, our perception can be skewed, and we're just not driving to the best of our capability. He didn't wake up, though, to kill people. That's not what his goal was. He didn't set out to murder any 2 people, but unfortunately, these kind of drivers, or people with a history of problematic driving, can be a threat to our society. So in that situation, he should not be driving ever again, and he did plead, and the family does need closure.
Okay, you know, I'm going to put aside closure.
Okay.
I got to tell you, I don't know about closure as a virtue, frankly, Buzz. If somebody had done this to a member of my family, I don't know that I would ever get closure. But I want to ask my criminal defense colleague, Greg Heisler, a question here. Greg, it is certainly true that you know, he was a bad driver. He didn't set out to kill anybody. This was accidental or negligent. Right. But he wasn't supposed to be driving in the first place. His driver's license had been suspended. He deliberately drove. And had he not, and look, I don't want to sound like a prosecutor here, but had he not deliberately done what the law prohibited him from doing, he would not have been in a position to kill 2 people, even accidentally.
I agree with that. He should not have been driving. The reason why he was suspended, however, was because he wasn't paying his child support. It was an administrative suspension. It wasn't because of bad driving. The real question that really weirds me about the whole deal is the prosecutor wasn't going to charge him if he turned himself in at 9 o'clock in the morning. Later that afternoon, he turns himself in after talking to a lawyer, and he's looking at 15 years in jail. What's the difference in that time span? And that's kind of disturbing from my perspective.
All right, we're going to explore that later on. We've got to take a quick break. Don't go away, because coming up next, we're going to talk to the 2 defense attorneys for Adam Gallard, get their reaction to their client's guilty plea. We will be right back.